First Contact and Challenge. The crystalline spires of the Galactic Institute of Advanced Sciences pierced the purple sky of Centauri Prime, their translucent surfaces refracting the light of 3 distant suns. Kira Patel stood at the base of the main tower, her heart pounding against her ribcage as she adjusted the environmental suit that kept her alive in the silicon-based atmosphere. She was the first human ever admitted to the Institute, and the weight of that responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like a gravitational anomaly. The entrance portal hummed to life, its biosensors scanning her quantum signature before allowing her to step through. Inside, the air shimmered with holographic displays and streams of data that would have overwhelmed most humans. But Kira had prepared for this moment since she was a child, studying advanced xenophysics and multidimensional mathematics while her peers were still learning basic calculus. Specimen Patel, you are precisely 2.3 microclicks late. The voice emanated from everywhere and nowhere at once, its tones carrying subtle harmonics that made Kira's teeth ache. Professor Zyxtal materialized before her, their crystalline form shifting through colors that Kira's human eyes could barely process. The professor's reputation preceded them, the foremost expert in quantum mechanics in 3 galaxies, and notoriously skeptical of primitive species cognitive capabilities. My apologies, Professor, Kira replied, keeping her voice steady. The atmospheric adjustment took longer than expected. She refused to show weakness, even as her suit's processors struggled to maintain optimal conditions. Zyxtal's form pulsed with what might have been amusement. Yes, your biological limitations are evident. Follow. They glided forward, leaving Kira to hurry after them through corridors that seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. The professor's laboratory was a vast chamber that appeared to extend infinitely in all directions, filled with equipment that made Earth's most advanced technology look like children's toys. Other students, beings of pure energy, crystalline entities, and forms Kira couldn't begin to describe, worked at various stations, each engaged in research that pushed the boundaries of known science. Your acceptance to this institution has been controversial, Zyxtal stated, their form shifting to a deep indigo. Many of my colleagues believe humans lack the necessary neural architecture to comprehend true quantum mechanics. Your species still clings to outdated concepts like wave-particle duality. Kira bit back a retort. She had graduated top of her class at MIT at age 15, completed her PhD in quantum physics by 18, and developed 3 new theories of quantum entanglement. But here, in this place, those achievements meant nothing. To evaluate your potential worth to this institution, Zyxtal continued, you will be given a challenge. One that will likely prove impossible for your limited cognitive framework, but will at least provide valuable data on human intellectual boundaries. A holographic display materialized between them, showing a complex series of equations and quantum state diagrams. Kira's eyes widened as she recognized the implications. The quantum resonance paradox, she breathed. Earth's best scientists had been trying to solve this problem for decades. It was the key to stable quantum computing and faster-than-light communication, but every attempt at a solution had ended in failure. Indeed. Zyxtal's form rippled. You have 1 orbital cycle to provide a solution. Most species require at least 10 cycles to even grasp the fundamental concepts involved. This will be an interesting experiment in human limitations. The other students had stopped their work to observe, their various sensory organs focused on Kira. She could feel their dismissal, their certainty of her failure. But beneath her fear and uncertainty, something else burned, determination. I accept the challenge, Kira said, her voice carrying across the impossible space of the laboratory. But I have one condition. Zyxtal's form froze, colors cycling rapidly. You are hardly in a position to make demands, Specimen Patel. When I solve it, Kira emphasized that, when, you will acknowledge that humans are capable of understanding true quantum mechanics. That we deserve a place here. The laboratory fell silent, even the quantum fluctuations seeming to hold their breath. Finally, Zwextal's form stabilized into a deep purple. Your species' confidence despite overwhelming evidence of its limitations is fascinating. Very well. I accept your terms. As Kira was led to her research station, she could feel the weight of destiny settling around her. She had one cycle to solve an impossible problem, to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. The quantum displays danced before her, their complexity both terrifying and beautiful. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Then, with the eyes of the galaxy's most advanced beings upon her, Kira Patel began to work. The hidden pattern. The first 3 days passed in a blur of quantum equations and dimensional matrices. Kira's research station had become a nest of holographic displays, each showing a different aspect of the quantum resonance paradox. She had barely slept, relying on her suit's stimulant protocols to keep her mind sharp. Professor Zwextal materialized periodically to observe her progress, their crystalline form emanating waves of what Kira had begun to recognize as skeptical amusement. But she barely noticed anymore, too absorbed in the patterns emerging from the quantum noise. Something was wrong with the traditional approach to the paradox. Every species that had attempted to solve it had treated quantum resonance as a purely mathematical problem, trying to force the universe's fundamental forces into neat, predictable equations. But the more Kira studied the data, the more she became convinced they were all missing something essential. Your attempts at pattern recognition are primitive, a voice chimed from behind her. Kira turned to see Nxthal, a sixth-dimensional energy being who had made no secret of their disdain for human cognition. You still rely on visual processing. How limiting. Kira ignored the jab, focusing instead on the holographic display before her. There was something there, just at the edge of her perception. The quantum fluctuations weren't random, they were following a pattern so subtle that even the Institute's advanced AI systems had missed it. Perhaps, she replied absently, making another adjustment to the display. But sometimes limitations can be advantages. We humans had to develop different ways of seeing patterns because we couldn't simply process everything at once. Nxthal's energy field pulsed with dismissal. A charming rationalization of your species' inadequacies. But Kira wasn't listening anymore. She had adjusted the quantum visualization to show the data in 3 dimensions, then 4, then 5, and suddenly, there it was. A pattern that looked almost like music, she whispered. What? Nxthal's field fluctuated with confusion. Kira's fingers flew over the controls, reconfiguring the display. The quantum resonance patterns, they're not just mathematical sequences. They're harmonics. Like music, but in quantum dimensions. She began to hum softly, matching her voice to the frequencies she saw in the data. The holographic display responded, the quantum patterns shifting and flowing with her voice. Several nearby students stopped their work to observe, their various sensory organs registering surprise. Professor Zwextal materialized instantly, drawn by the unprecedented behavior of the quantum display. Explain, they demanded, their forms cycling through shades of deep blue and violet. Every approach so far has tried to solve the paradox through pure mathematics, Kira said, her excitement building. But quantum mechanics isn't just about numbers, it's about resonance, harmony, the way different states and dimensions interact. Like music. She adjusted the display again, and the laboratory filled with a strange, beautiful harmony as the quantum patterns translated into sound. See? The paradox isn't a problem to be solved, it's a symphony to be understood. Zwextal's form became absolutely still, their colors frozen in a pattern Kira had never seen before. This approach is unorthodox. It's human, Kira replied simply. We've always found patterns in places others might miss, because we had to. Our limited senses forced us to look deeper, to find connections that might not be obvious at first glance. She worked quickly now, translating the quantum harmonics into a new mathematical framework. The equations began to flow in a different way, following the rhythm she had discovered. Other students drew closer, their initial dismissal giving way to reluctant interest. The resolution is still incomplete, Zyxtal noted, but their tone had changed subtly. Yes, Kira agreed, but now we're finally asking the right questions. The paradox isn't about forcing quantum states to align, it's about finding the natural harmony that already exists between them. As if to emphasize her point, the quantum display erupted in a cascade of synchronized patterns, each flowing into the next like movements in a cosmic symphony. For a moment, the entire laboratory seemed to pulse with the rhythm of quantum reality itself. NXThal's energy field flickered rapidly. This is not how quantum mechanics works. Not how you've been taught it works, Kira corrected gently, her fingers still dancing over the controls. But maybe that's why no one has solved the paradox yet. Sometimes you need a different perspective, even a primitive one, to see what everyone else has missed. Professor Zyxtal remained silent, their form shifting through colors Kira couldn't name. Finally, they spoke. Continue your research, Specimen Patel. This line of inquiry is unexpected. Coming from Zyxtal, it was practically a glowing endorsement. As the professor glided away, Kira allowed herself a small smile. She hadn't solved the paradox yet, but she had found something no one else had seen, a hidden pattern in the quantum noise, waiting to be understood. The other students gradually returned to their own work, but something had changed. The dismissive glances were fewer, replaced by curious observations. Kira barely noticed, already lost in the quantum harmonies she had discovered. She had less than half a cycle left to solve the paradox, but for the first time, she felt like she was truly beginning to understand it. In the vast chamber of the laboratory, the holographic displays continued to pulse with the rhythm of quantum reality, their patterns moving to a music only Kira could hear. Breaking point. The discovery of quantum harmonics should have been a breakthrough. Instead, it became the beginning of Kira's nightmare. 3 days into her new approach, everything fell apart. She stood before her research station, watching in horror as her quantum calculations collapsed into chaos. The beautiful patterns she had discovered, the harmonies that had seemed so promising, dissolved into discordant noise. Every attempt to stabilize them only made things worse. Fascinating, Professor Zyxtal observed, materializing beside her. It appears your musical approach has encountered the same fundamental barrier that defeats all primitive attempts to resolve the paradox. The quantum patterns are breaking down at the subharmonic level. Kira's hands trembled as she tried another adjustment. No, this isn't right. The harmony was there. I heard it, I saw it. But the displays only showed failure, the quantum states refusing to maintain coherence. Perhaps now you understand the futility of applying human intuition to problems beyond your species' comprehension, Zyxtal's form pulsed with what might have been pity. Your pattern recognition, while briefly interesting, has proven inadequate. Other students gathered to witness her failure, their various forms of perception focused on the collapsing quantum harmonics. NXThal's energy field rippled with something close to satisfaction. The experiment has reached its inevitable conclusion. Humans simply lack the cognitive architecture to grasp true quantum mechanics. Kira barely heard them. She was too focused on the data, desperately searching for where she had gone wrong. The quantum harmonies had been real, she was certain of it. But now they slipped through her fingers like stardust, leaving only chaos in their wake. I need more time, she whispered, more to herself than to her observers. Time is irrelevant, Zyxtal stated. The fundamental limitations of your species cannot be overcome with mere persistence. You have provided valuable data on human cognitive boundaries. That will be your contribution to the Institute. Something snapped inside Kira. She whirled to face the professor, her eyes blazing. No. You don't get to dismiss humanity based on one failed approach. We've overcome every limitation others have placed on us. We reached the stars when they said we couldn't. We achieved faster-than-light travel when they said it was impossible. We're here, in your institute, despite every voice that said we didn't belong. The laboratory fell silent. Even the quantum fluctuations seemed to hold their breath. Zwaigstaal's form shifted through colors Kira had never seen before, their crystalline structure vibrating with what might have been shock. Your emotional response is, Zwaigstaal began, but Kira cut them off. My emotional response is exactly what you don't understand, she said, her voice quieter now but no less intense. You see emotions as a weakness, as proof of our primitive nature. But our emotions drive us to push boundaries, to find solutions where pure logic sees only impossibility. She turned back to her displays, her mind racing. The quantum harmonies weren't wrong. We were just listening to them wrong. Like trying to understand a symphony by analyzing each note in isolation. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. To her surprise, it came from Rix, a gaseous entity who had never spoken to her before. Their cloud-like form drifted closer, changing colors as they communicated. Your species' persistence is intriguing, Rix chimed. Perhaps there is value in examining quantum resonance through multiple perceptual frameworks. Kira stared at the swirling colors of Rix's form, an idea beginning to take shape. Multiple frameworks, she repeated slowly. Not just hearing the quantum harmonies, but seeing them, feeling them, understanding them from every possible angle. Her fingers flew over the controls, reconfiguring the displays. What if the paradox isn't about finding a single solution? What if it's about finding all the solutions at once? Impossible, Zwaigstaal declared. The computational requirements alone would be beyond any single approach, Kira finished. But what if we combined approaches? Your multidimensional processing, Rix's gaseous quantum sensitivity, my pattern recognition, each seeing a different aspect of the same reality. Professor Zwaigstaal's form had gone completely still. You propose a collaborative solution? With species you consider primitive? Kira met their gaze steadily. I propose that every species, no matter how primitive or advanced, might see something others miss. The paradox has remained unsolved because everyone's been trying to solve it alone. She gestured at her failed calculations. My approach didn't fail because humans are limited. It failed because I was still thinking too much like you, trying to find a single, perfect solution. But quantum reality isn't perfect. It's messy and complex and beautiful, just like life itself. The laboratory hummed with energy as her words hung in the air. Finally, Rix chimed again. I would be willing to share my perceptual framework. As would I, another student added, their crystalline form glowing softly. One by one, others joined in, until even Zwaigstaal's energy field pulsed with reluctant agreement. Kira looked at Professor Zwaigstaal, waiting. The professor's form cycled through colors so quickly they blurred together. This approach is unprecedented. Unorthodox. Perhaps. They paused, their colors settling into a pattern Kira had never seen before. Perhaps that is exactly what the paradox requires. Kira felt hope surge through her as she turned back to her displays. She still had no guarantee of success, but she was no longer alone in her quest. As she began integrating the different perceptual frameworks into her quantum harmonics model, she realized that this was humanity's greatest strength, not our individual brilliance, but our ability to bring others together, to find unity in diversity. The quantum patterns began to pulse with new life, each species' unique perspective adding layers to the cosmic symphony she had discovered. There was still much work to be done, but Kira knew she had found her path forward. Sometimes, it took reaching a breaking point to break through to something new. The human element. The laboratory had transformed. Where once there were isolated research stations, now there was a web of interconnected quantum interfaces, each pulsing with the unique signature of a different species' perception. At the center of this network stood Kira's station, now serving as a hub for the unprecedented collaboration. Rix's gaseous form swirled through quantum probability clouds, their natural sensitivity to subatomic fluctuations revealing patterns invisible to others. The harmonic resonance shifts here, they chimed, their colors rippling with excitement. Like what you would call a key change in music. I see it, Kira responded, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. She had modified her interface to translate quantum data from multiple perceptual frameworks simultaneously. NX thou, can you process the dimensional variations at that point? The energy being's field extended into the quantum display, analyzing the shift Rix had detected. The pattern exists across 17 dimensions simultaneously. Previous analyses only examined up to 12. There was a note of wonder in their usually dismissive voice. Professor Zyxtal moved through the laboratory like a crystalline ghost, observing the collaboration with increasing interest. Their form had settled into a deep, contemplative blue that Kira had never seen before. The traditional approach to quantum mechanics assumes a universal observer, Kira explained as she worked, more for her own benefit than her colleagues. But what if that's our fundamental mistake? What if quantum reality looks different to every species because it actually is different for each of us? Impossible, one of the crystalline students objected, but with less certainty than before. Quantum mechanics must be objective. Must it? Kira asked, not looking up from her calculations. We already know that the act of observation affects quantum states. What if different forms of consciousness, different ways of perceiving reality, interact with quantum mechanics in fundamentally different ways? She gestured at the swirling displays around them. Look at what we're seeing. Rix perceives quantum harmonics as something like taste. NX thou experiences them as dimensional tessellations. The crystalline species see them as lattice vibrations. And humans, we find patterns, stories, music in the chaos. And you propose that all these perceptions are equally valid? Professor Zyxtal's voice carried a mix of skepticism and fascination. Not just valid, Kira said, her excitement building. Necessary. The quantum resonance paradox has remained unsolved because we've been trying to force quantum reality into a single perceptual framework. But what if the solution requires all of them? She made another adjustment, and the quantum displays erupted in a cascade of synchronized patterns. Each species' unique perception was represented differently, but they all moved in harmony, like instruments in an orchestra. The mathematics are elegant, NX thou admitted, their energy field pulsing with surprised appreciation. The multidimensional matrices align perfectly when viewed across all perceptual frameworks simultaneously. Rix chimed in agreement, their gaseous form swirling with excitement. The quantum harmonics, they taste like everything at once, Kira finished softly. Because that's what quantum reality is, everything, everywhere, all at once, perceived differently by every conscious observer. The laboratory hummed with energy as the implications of their discovery began to sink in. This wasn't just a solution to the quantum resonance paradox, it was a fundamental shift in how quantum mechanics itself could be understood. Professor Zyxtal's form had gone completely still, their colors locked in a pattern of deep contemplation. Your approach challenges every established principle of quantum theory. Good, Kira said firmly. Sometimes principles need to be challenged. Sometimes the only way forward is to question everything we think we know. She turned to face the professor directly. You thought humans were too primitive to understand true quantum mechanics. But maybe we understand something more important, that the universe is too vast and complex for any single species to comprehend alone. Our greatest strength isn't our individual capabilities, but our ability to work together, to combine different perspectives into something greater than the sum of its parts. The quantum displays pulsed with newfound stability, each species' perception adding depth and complexity to the overall pattern. The solution to the paradox was emerging not as a single, definitive answer, but as a harmony of multiple truths existing simultaneously. We have one day left, Kira announced to her colleagues. Let's make it count. Every perspective, every insight, every way of seeing and experiencing quantum reality, we need all of it. Together, we're going to solve this. The laboratory burst into activity, each being contributing their unique understanding to the growing solution. Even NX Thal, who had been so dismissive of human cognition, was fully engaged, their energy field merging with the quantum displays in ways that revealed new layers of complexity. As Kira coordinated the efforts, she felt a profound sense of rightness. This was what humanity brought to the galactic community, not superior technology or advanced cognitive architecture, but the ability to bring diverse perspectives together, to find unity in diversity, to see the music in the mathematics of the universe. Professor Zyxtal drifted closer, their crystalline form shimmering with an emotion Kira couldn't quite identify. Perhaps, they said softly, we have all been limited by our certainty of our own superiority. Kira smiled as she made another adjustment to the quantum harmonics. The universe has a way of humbling us all, Professor. The only question is whether we learn from it. The displays pulsed with growing coherence as the final pieces of the solution began to fall into place. Tomorrow, they would present their findings to the Institute. But for now, in this moment, species from across the galaxy worked together in harmony, each contributing their unique voice to the quantum symphony they were creating. And at the center of it all, a human stood, proving that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come not from having the most advanced capabilities, but from having the wisdom to know that every perspective matters. Paradigm shift. The Institute's Grand Assembly Hall stretched impossibly upward, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 different species gathered to witness the presentation. Kira stood on the central platform, her environmental suit gleaming under the multispectral illumination. Around her, the most brilliant minds in the galaxy waited to judge her solution to the quantum resonance paradox. Proceed, Specimen Patel, the chief administrator's voice resonated through the hall, their energy formed a swirling vortex of anticipated skepticism. Kira took a deep breath and activated the quantum interface. Immediately, the hall filled with synchronized displays, each calibrated to be perceivable by different species in their preferred sensory modes. Distinguished colleagues, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart, we stand at the threshold of a fundamental shift in our understanding of quantum mechanics. The solution to the quantum resonance paradox isn't what any of us expected, because we were all asking the wrong questions. The holographic displays erupted into life, showing the combined work of the past cycle. Multiple perceptual frameworks merged and flowed together, creating a symphony of quantum data that each species could interpret in their own way. We've been trying to force quantum reality into a single, universal framework, Kira continued. But what we've discovered is that quantum mechanics itself is inherently multifaceted, responding differently to different forms of consciousness and perception. She gestured to her colleagues, who had taken positions around the hall. Rix experiences quantum states as flavors. NX Thal perceives them as dimensional matrices. Our crystalline colleagues feel them as lattice vibrations. And humans, we find patterns, rhythms, music in the quantum foam. The displays shifted, showing how each perceptual framework contributed to the overall solution. None of these perspectives is wrong. They're all valid, all necessary, all part of a larger truth. The quantum resonance paradox remained unsolved because we were trying to find a single answer when we needed a harmony of multiple truths. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The chief administrator's energy form pulsed with interest. You claim that quantum reality is subjective? No, Kira smiled. I claim it's more complex than that. Quantum reality exists independently of observation, but how it manifests, how it can be understood and manipulated, depends on the observer's consciousness and perceptual framework. She initiated the final sequence, and the quantum displays blazed with newfound coherence. The paradox's solution emerged not as a single equation, but as a cascading harmony of multiple mathematical frameworks, each valid from its own perspective, all working together in perfect synchronization. This is why the paradox resisted traditional solutions, Kira explained. We needed not just advanced mathematics or superior cognitive architecture, but the ability to see through multiple perspectives simultaneously. To find unity in diversity. To understand that sometimes the truth is too vast for any single point of view. Professor Zyxtal glided forward, their crystalline form radiating colors that spoke of profound realization. The implications for quantum theory are revolutionary. This challenges everything we thought we knew about observer-quantum interaction. Yes, Kira agreed. But it also opens new possibilities. By combining different perceptual frameworks, we can achieve quantum coherence in ways that were previously impossible. The applications for quantum computing, faster-than-light communication, even consciousness transfer, are endless. The hall erupted in discussion, each species contributing their unique understanding to the implications of the discovery. The chief administrator's energy form expanded, encompassing the entire platform. Specimen Patel, they intoned, your solution is unprecedented. You have not merely resolved the paradox, you have transformed our understanding of quantum mechanics itself. Kira stood straighter. Not me alone. This was a collaborative effort, proving that the greatest discoveries come not from individual brilliance, but from bringing different perspectives together. That's what humanity brings to the galactic community, not superior technology or advanced cognitive architecture, but the ability to unite diverse viewpoints, to find harmony in difference, to see possibilities where others see only limitations. Professor Zyxtal moved to her side, their colors shifting to a pattern she had never seen before. I must acknowledge my error, they declared, their voice carrying through the hall. I believed humans were limited by their primitive nature. Instead, they possess something perhaps more valuable, the wisdom to know that no single species, no matter how advanced, has a monopoly on truth. The chief administrator's form pulsed with what might have been approval. The Institute formally recognizes your achievement. Your species has earned its place among us, not as primitive learners, but as valued contributors to galactic knowledge. As the assembly erupted in a cacophony of approval expressed in 1,000 different ways, Kira felt tears in her eyes. She had done more than solve a paradox or prove humanity's worth. She had shown that the path to understanding the universe's deepest mysteries lay not in proving superiority, but in celebrating diversity. The quantum displays continued their synchronized dance, each pattern contributing to a greater whole, just as each species contributed its unique perspective to the tapestry of galactic civilization. In the end, the greatest paradox had been their own assumptions about primitive and advanced, about superiority and limitation. As Kira looked out over the assembled beings, she saw not aliens and humans, not advanced and primitive, but fellow explorers on the grand journey of discovery. The universe, she knew, would always have more mysteries to solve. But together, combining their unique perspectives and abilities, there was no paradox they couldn't unravel, no truth they couldn't understand. The future stretched before them, infinite in its possibilities, waiting to be explored by all species working in harmony. And humanity, with its unique gift for bringing diverse perspectives together, would help lead the way into that future, one breakthrough at a time.